Hello gamers, it's Wintermute here from Grind This Game, and this episode is going to be about kind of tips to get you started, starting out fresh in the game. Hopefully these tips will kind of help you out and save you from kind of making some mistakes. It's obviously not going to be perfect, but it's kind of things I've learned along the way that help things out. So first kind of order of business is picking your dupes, and I always try to start out with at least one researcher or scientist, which is a high learning, and they'll do all your research on the research station, which is important. You want to get through it quickly. That'll unlock new buildings and new machinery that you can use. And then it's handy to have an artist early on, and they're able to create like paintings and sculptures. This will increase the decor of your base, and the higher the decor, the lower the stress your dupes will have. And stress can be like a bit of a killer in the game if your dupes get too stressed out. Some of them will, like this one, there's a stress response. So if this one gets too stressed, they'll start vomiting, which puts polluted water everywhere, and stepping in polluted water causes more stress, so it's a bit of a nasty feedback loop that happens. Binge eater is actually really dangerous because if they get stressed, they'll basically eat all your food. And then everyone will starve to death. So I'm going to pick it, but I suggest that you avoid this one generally. I build massage tables early on to try to keep the stress down in all my dupes, so I'm going to go with this one just because they have high learning. And then I also try to get either a digger or someone who's good at construction. This one's got decent digging. And then strength is also useful. So strength is one of those attributes that let you carry more stuff, and you can't level it up. So it's nice to have one person with strength that can deliver things. You'll see mole hands, which kind of increases the digging. Yokel is okay. It means you can't do research, but we already have one kind of researcher over here, so it's not a problem. The stress response ugly crier. It basically causes the mood around the person who's stressed out to go down, so it can kind of spread the stress throughout your colony. And then decor expectation is kind of, if they have a low decor expectation, it's good because you don't need a really fancy bedroom or base to keep them happy. So this decor expectation of 45 is really not very good, but I don't know if it comes with high creativity, maybe, but I'm gonna go with it. But I suggest that you go for a low decor expectation. And then there's one other stress response. There's probably a few more, but one of them is destructive. It's not shown here, but they'll go and start smashing your machinery and your buildings, which is probably a bad stress response to get. And then food quality, the lower the better. So you can feed them pretty much any garbage, and they'll be somewhat happy. So I think that's it for kind of duplicants. Medicine I found not to be very useful. Tinkering is good. They'll use machinery better. Cooking is important. They'll cook food at the cooking station or the mush maker faster. And athletics I wouldn't bother with because they level up athletics just from running around. So it's not really as important starting out. So we'll kind of start. So here we are starting out. And what I would do right away is hit spacebar to pause. You can also pause up here on the left. Just to kind of get your bearings and see what's around and kind of plan things out. So you'll see we're kind of lucky here. We got some water right away, and water is used to fill up terrariums, which you get later that produce oxygen, and they're also used to create mush bars, which is a kind of food. So it's nice that we have water really close. This stuff here is called oxalate, and it produces oxygen for you, and your little duplicant guys need oxygen to survive. So you don't want to mine this stuff out because it'll destroy it. You want to expose it, so this one and this one is exposed to the air, So you'll see if you unpause, it'll bubble up the oxygen here. And eventually this will run out. It'll emit oxygen and then eventually it'll consume all this oxalate. And the oxalate only kind of shows up in the starting area. I haven't really seen it too far out from the starting area. It's kind of just to help you out. It's a bit of a crutch in the beginning of the game. One thing I forgot to mention when you're starting out are two other qualities of dupes. Flatulence, which is kind of a negative trait. It causes them to fart and stinks up the air. You probably want to avoid that one. And the other one is loud sleeper. You definitely want to avoid that one because you'll have to build the bed for the loud sleeper far away from everyone else and basically give them a lot of room to sleep, or they'll wake up the other duplicants. So you'll start off with 20,000 kilocalories of food, which will last you, you can kind of, if you click on a dupe, you can see how much they eat. So this duplicant is burning 1,000 calories a day, and we have, they start out kind of full. We have 3 dupes, so we're going to be burning 3,000 calories a day, so this will last about 7 days. So you'll need to find some other food within 7 days, or not days, they're called cycles, but they're kind of like days. And there is some natural food occurring on the map. That's this mealwood is over here. So you can dig in here and get some mealwood. There's also bristle blossom. It's not ready to harvest yet, but these ones are ready to harvest. And there is food. That food is in this ration box here. You can see field ration. And because it's not cooled, it'll basically break down, and eventually you'll want to build a thing called like a refrigerator, which keeps your food cool. And you'll probably see at the top left here, colony requires toilets. So you need toilets kind of, I would say, within the first cycle. Because if you click on a duplicant, you can see bladder 2%. So this will keep going up, and then eventually they'll have to go to the bathroom. And if they don't have a toilet to go in, they'll just kind of pee or poo on the ground. And then if they step in that, it kind of stresses them out. And then stress will naturally kind of, depending on what they're doing, will go up or down over time. And if they get too stressed out, they'll do their stress thing. Like this one will vomit. This one will start crying and stress everyone else out. And this one will start eating everything. And I think they do that when they hit stress. I think it's over to 70%, but I'm not sure. I try to not let them get over 50% stress. And there's ways to relieve that. Later on you'll build a massage table to reduce their stress. And there's other things you can do as well. There are some help menus up here that can kind of help you out. Basic movement. Mouse wheel, zoom in, zoom out. Space is pause. You can do tab to go faster. I would say in the first few cycles though, until you get comfortable, just go at regular speed. Except for night times, you might want to go faster. And then the help tells you how to dig. So you can either use the menu with your mouse and do dig, and then select where you want to dig, or I usually just use the key G, and then you can dig things out. So I tend to dig in, you can see how high it is, so this is 1, 2, 3, I try to dig and make kind of tunnels 4 levels high. You don't have to, but the tallest machinery you can build is 4 tiles high, so I tend to make my floors, I'll make tile floors like this here, and then I'll have 4 spaces, and then I'll make another tile floor. And that ensures that I can fit anything in, and they have enough space. The minimum height that you can get away with is just 2 high, and they'll be able to fit through that kind of tunnel. But there's more risk of them getting trapped if, like the sand here, if you build a tunnel, the sand will fall down, and then they might get trapped in there. So I try to dig 4 high. And you also don't want to step in water or release this water yet. You kind of want to get at it either from above or kind of dig up, and then they can if they're standing like right here, for instance, they'll be able to get at the water. They have these little machines that they suck the water out with. So you don't have to actually stand in it to get it. So we'll let them start digging here. Their trusty little lasers. And as they're digging, all the stuff that they're digging will fall to the ground. And eventually you want to make storage containers to put this stuff in, because stuff on the ground will stress them out. There's some important overlays up at the top here, top right. And you can get at them with a function key like F1, F2, or you can just click. So F1 is the oxygen. So we start off with high oxygen concentration here. It's a little bit lower here, and then these red bits are what they've breathed out, the carbon dioxide. And if this whole room was filled with carbon dioxide, they would die. They would suffocate. So you want to make sure you have a place for the CO2, the carbon dioxide, to go, and we'll talk about that later. But generally carbon dioxide sinks, so you can kind of make a pit for it to go into, and that kind of keeps the higher levels full of oxygen. Eventually, if you didn't produce any oxygen and you would use it all up, they would breathe it all, but there's buildings you can build, and like I said, this oxalite is producing oxygen for a little while. One of the other important overlays is temperature, which is F3, and everything is kind of temperate in here, but blue is cold, and they can get hypothermia, and their stress will go up if they get too cold. And then over here is warm. If they get too hot, they'll get heat stress, and they won't be very happy. And if they get way too hot, they'll start burning, and their health will go down. But that usually only occurs in steam geysers or way at the bottom of the map in magma. So you notice the sand has fallen down and kind of clogged the area. So you got to make sure that doesn't happen, and you want to just dig it out right away so that things stay nice and clean or accessible. So it's all falling out down here. And they can get trapped if too much sand falls. So you want to make sure you dig it out. Now if you look at the top left, you'll see cycle 1, and this dark little band here is kind of the progress of the day, or the cycle, and it's moving clockwise. So you want to, when it gets to this red bit here, it'll be nighttime and they'll go to sleep. And if they don't have any beds, they'll just go to sleep on the ground, which causes them to have a sore back, which is sad, and their stress will go up. So you want to build them beds as well. And we probably want to build toilets and beds before this gets all the way around. But we need some materials to do that. And we probably have some now because we've been digging. And that's under furniture. At this bottom left menu is kind of your building menu. And that's under furniture we have a cot, which is like their bed. And for now I'll just build them kind of close to the center of the base, and I'm going to build 3. One here, maybe one here. And the nice thing is, if you decide to move them later, you can deconstruct them and you'll get all the materials back. So don't feel too bad about placing things in the wrong place early on, because you can always move them without too much penalty. The other thing your dupes might do is, like right now this guy's technically stuck, or there's 2 people here, because they can only climb up 2 tiles high, so they without digging they would not be able to jump down here and they would get stuck. So you got to make sure that they don't do that, and you can just kind of dig them out. And this right here is copper. You're going to need copper for kind of early machinery. And it's nice to build tile because they move faster on tile, and you can do that under base tile. And if you build it over top of rock, they will dig out the rock and then just lay the tile on top, so you don't have to dig and then build. So we got 3 beds now. One other thing to note is that they're able to jump across, like let's say there was a hole here. They're able to jump across 1 tile, but that's it. So you can leave 1 tile gaps, but make sure if there's 2 gaps, they won't be able to jump over and they can get stuck. So I would take your time, kind of starting out, pause if you need to. There's no rush, especially when you're learning. This thing over here, the printing pod, once another 2 cycles go by, this thing will light up and you'll be able to get 1 more duplicant, and you'll get to choose from 3. You don't necessarily have to take on a duplicant each time this printing pod lights up. You can reject all, and sometimes if all 3 duplicants have bad stats, you may want to do that. The other reason you don't want to take on too many duplicants is that you got to feed them all, and you got to have enough oxygen for them all. So I try to only take on ones that are really, really good, and to make sure I have my food kind of all set up and sustained before I take on any more than maybe 5 or 10. Otherwise they might starve to death. So the temperature is good in this big green area here. So I probably don't want to go too far. I don't want to build any kind of bedrooms maybe in here because it's getting a bit warm. Green is actually a little bit cold for them, but red is, it's actually, if it's their body temperature, which is 37, it's okay, but when it gets over to 40, it'll start to get too warm. Oh, this little guy here, okay. This is a hatch. They're generally harmless, but they'll eat all your materials and produce coal, poop out coal. And coal is useful for the coal power plant later on in the game, but so you can just kind of ignore them or you can kill them. And under this jobs menu, you'll see combat's pre-selected. Sometimes they can aggravate your dupes and they'll automatically attack them, or you can actually click on them and attack. And I'll actually do that for this, so I just want to show you. So we can kill them. And they may get injured when they go through combat. When he dies, he'll produce a little piece of meat on the ground. So there's 2 pieces of meat here, which is food, which you can use. So under vitals, you can see they probably were at 100% health, and now they're less because they took a little bit of damage during that fight. And I think they'll heal over time on their own, but there's things we can build later to heal them up. So their bladders are at 29%, so they're getting close to the point where they need to go to the bathroom. And for now, I'm going to build the toilets over to the left here. And they are under plumbing. It's the outhouse, not a toilet. And you can actually build them right in the, if you build them right in the kind of rock here, they'll automatically dig them out for you. So I'm actually going to put one here. Now a common thing I see people do is they'll just build one, and it fills up pretty fast. So having one is probably not enough. You'll have much easier time if you just build 2. And they only cost 200 sandstone, and you have tons early on. So I always build 2 just because I can. They're inexpensive and they have 15 visits each before they need to be emptied. So I just end up building 2. I think it's a really useful tip. So one of them just leveled up digging. Gossman leveled up digging. So they'll just, as they do things, digging will go up, athletics will go up just from them running around. So if you click on the outhouse, you can see 15 visits remaining. And then once it's full, they'll have to clean it out, and they'll have to put the poop, or the polluted dirt is what ends up being in here. They'll need to put it somewhere, and later on you'll want a compost, which is something you need to research to put the stuff in. Your main goal should be build a couple outhouses and build a bed for each duplicant before your first cycle is over. So we're done that, which is good, and the rest I'm just exploring out here. And if you have time, you can build the next thing, which is a research station, and I will put that kind of over here. Yeah, maybe here. You can kind of see if you click on the outhouse, it has a decor of -18 for 5 tiles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. So this bed's kind of safe. It's not getting the bad decor from these. So you kind of want to build these off to the corner where they're not seen very much, but I just built them there for now. And the research station can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles away from the outhouses as well. And it takes copper, so you got to make sure you have enough copper, and we do right now, before you can build this. So we'll pick up the copper and build this. And the other thing you can build is a storage compactor. And these have a, they cause a low decor as well, so you don't want to build them really close to bedrooms or anything. I'll build it right here beside the outhouse. I'm going to speed things up just so they can build these faster. And I'll also dig a bit while they're, just so no one's idle. So if you click on the storage compactor, you can assign what goes in it, and you can set a priority. So if you leave everything at priority 5, they may not kind of get to it right away, but if you put it for, let's say, priority 9 and everything else is a lower priority, they'll pick up all the stuff and put it in the storage compactor for you. So I'm going to select everything, and then later on there's certain things that you probably don't want in here, like slime, but that we don't have any yet, so we can't select it. And I'll leave it 5 for now. Just priority, if you can see priority under the prioritize menu here, bottom right, or you can hit P, and we can see this dig order is a priority 5, storage compactor is priority 5, and if you need something done right away, you can set it to priority 9, and they'll just do it right away. But later on you might have like 20 or 30 different build orders for different things, and you can kind of manage the priority with these. So 1 is highest, and 1 is lowest, and 9 is highest. So this research station will require power. You can see this little red socket or power plug. So for power, we need to build under power, a manual generator, which looks like a little hamster wheel. And we can put that over right beside it. And you'll also want to build a tiny battery to store the power. And then you want to connect it all up with this electrical wire, which takes copper. So what you do is you just kind of drag it along like this. Makes a nice little pleasing sound. And then you want to connect it to this manual generator, and then you also want to connect it to the battery. And then once all those are hooked up, I'll speed it up here just so they build it quicker. Now they had to dig through the ground to install the wiring, and now these machines won't work if there's empty ground underneath, so you need to put some tile. When you have more than one material, you can select other materials. Right now we only have sandstone, which is fine. So we'll just build it all out of sandstone, and we'll just put it all along here. So now that this is all hooked up, one of your dupes will get on this manual generator, and they will run. If you click on the generator, you can see this battery recharge threshold, and they'll run on the battery. They'll run on the wheel until this battery gets to 50%, and then they'll jump off. Sometimes they'll just keep running until it's full. Actually, the way it works is if the battery reaches 50%, they'll get on the wheel and run until it's full. And now it's bedtime. So we got to the end of the cycle, and they'll all go to their... They'll pick a bed at random. You can also assign them a bed. At nighttime, these little hatches, they come out, and they'll start eating things, like your food. And I usually speed things up at night, because there's not much you can do. You can give them orders, but they won't do anything while they're sleeping. So that should get you through the first day. We can assign them some research. So if you click on this research station, and then click research, you'll get this menu. And generally you can do everything on this left-hand column with the basic research station, and then for the stuff over here you need an advanced supercomputer, which lets you do advanced or intermediate research. So I just work my way down from farming, gas piping, work my way to the bottom left, starting with farming. So you just click it, close the window, and you actually want to go into jobs. And if you had a good researcher, like Ruby they have a high learning, that's why this is purple. So I deselect the other two, so only Ruby will do research, and she'll do it the fastest. You may want to do that with other skills, like Hassan's really good at harvesting, so you may want to unselect the other two from harvesting, but it's up to you. And then you always want to keep everyone on massage, because that's one of the ways they'll reduce their stress. If you have a good cook as well, you may want to only have one person on cooking, but both Ruby and Hassan are bad cooks, so it doesn't really matter. So here goes Ruby on the research station. I usually set the research station to priority 8 or 9, and that way Ruby will always be researching. She won't do anything else. So since they have nothing else to do, they're picking up all this garbage and putting it in the storage compactors. And they'll eat when they need to and go to the bathroom when they need to. This stuff up here is algae, which is pretty important, and you'll need it for making oxygen. If we look at our overlay F1, you can see we still got lots of oxygen because of this oxalate. But if you click the oxygen menu, you can build an algae deoxidizer, which converts algae into oxygen at a really fast rate. It requires power, so you would need to hook it up to this. And we don't need it yet, but we'll build one just because we can. And we'll stick it maybe right beside, or we'll put it over closer to the bedroom, or it's not a bedroom, but closer to the beds. And then we need to hook it up to the power, so we'll drag some wire from here over and connect it to this wire. As long as it's connected to the wire that's connected to the battery, you'll be okay. And you can also use the W key, sorry, the A key or the D key to do this, or you can just use your mouse. If you want to make a really long line though, it's easier to use the keyboard. These storage compactors don't hold very much, so you might need to build a bunch of them. This one, so you can see this little indicator, it's almost half full. And the reason you want to store things is that if you look under this decor menu, top right, F8, you can see that all these things on the ground are causing a low decor, which will stress them out. Over here where it's clean, it's nice and green. So it's worthwhile to keep some storage compactors around. I'll build another one here. Maybe two actually. And if they don't have anything busier to do, they'll pick up all this junk and put it in the storage. Or if you want it picked up right away, you can do a thing called a sweep, which is the bottom right. Select that and just kind of drag it over, and that'll tell them to sweep these things up right away. You can set a priority on sweep as well. So you can go priority 9, sweep, and they'll just pick those up right away. It'll ignore anything else and just do it. You can also cancel with the C key or cancel down here, bottom right. And you can actually be specific about what you want to cancel. You can just cancel everything, or you can cancel certain things. Like if you had a build order for wires and you wanted to cancel that, you can just hit C and then select wires and then drag it over the wires and it'll cancel it. Sometimes if you have, actually the same thing goes for deconstruct. If I wanted to deconstruct this tile, for instance, but I had it selected to all and there was some wire running through this tile which you can't see unless you hit F2. So you can see there's wire in this tile, but you would never see it. So if you deconstructed all, it would destroy your wire and your tile. So nice thing to do is just hit buildings and then you can destroy the tile or deconstruct the tile on its own without destroying the wire. So now I gotta rebuild that, but it's kind of handy. Now we got our algae deoxidizer built. I forgot to mention there's one overlay F2, which is top right, is this power, so you can see your wiring. F6 is for plumbing, which we'll get to later, and then F7 is for gas piping, which also comes later. And you see this little red indicator, so this algae deoxidizer needs algae, and we haven't mined any yet. We'd have to kind of go up here to get some, and or go down here. Let's mine this out. And actually we can go down. So if you go under base, you can build ladders. I've seen people who start out and they don't know you can build ladders and they try to build like little ramps. And the ramps work, but it's way more tedious than just building a ladder straight down. So we can go like this. That way they'll be able to access this part here. But it might be too tall for them to mine all of this algae. They can mine 2 tiles out from a ladder, but they can't reach anything beyond that. Oh, so that sound means we got through our research. So we go to the research menu. Farming is done, and this opens up a few new things, and then we'll select gas piping and just let that research. So that you can see what it opened up by these indicators here. So under oxygen we unlocked the algae terrarium, which recycles carbon dioxide, which they breathe out into oxygen. So this is a pretty important thing to build, because if you don't have anywhere for your CO2 to go early on, this thing is kind of vital. So we'll build one kind of over by their beds, over by the algae deoxidizer. And I'm actually going to disable this deoxidizer for now, and you can, if you click it, and then you can disable building, and that'll just cause it to be, it just won't function. So I'm turning it off because I don't need oxygen right now. I got tons, so I don't want to waste my algae. And the other thing we'll need for this algae terrarium beyond algae is water. So I may open up this room, being careful not to if I dug all the way through here, this would flood the base, so I'm just going to dig out this top little bits. And that way they can climb up here and then access the water. And it tells you a little tip here. So they don't need anything special to collect water, they just need to be able to access it. So there's two plants in here. There's some mealwood, which is growing on its own naturally. And there's some buried muckroot, which you can eat. I think you can only harvest this once, and you harvest with the T key or just clicking harvest down here and selecting. I can select them both and it'll turn green. And they'll auto harvest, so whenever they're ready to harvest, they'll just automatically go over and harvest it. So if I click on this piece of algae, I can see it's reachable, but if I click on this one, it says unreachable. So it's too high for them to reach. So what you got to do is, what I'll do is build a ladder, and so build a ladder up here, and you can build ladders kind of to the side as well, so they can crawl along here. I think that'll work. And if not, we could just build some extra ladders. And you can always dismantle the ladders later. They're just, sometimes they're temporary. So you want to keep an eye on food in the first, 5 or 10 cycles. We still have 20,000, so we're still okay, but we'll want to either farm some of the stuff that's on the map early on and eventually start growing our own food. Or making our own food. But we're okay for now. So he's able to get up there, or she, get up there and get that algae and walk across this ladder. Oh, so I had made these storage compactors, but I didn't assign them anything. So you can do the same thing, or you can, we set the rules for this one over here. So we can do a copy settings, which is kind of a new feature, and then click on these two, and it copies the settings over, so now they are set to everything. And if we go to this first one, we look under organic, we'll see algae and polluted dirt. So we probably don't want polluted dirt to be stored because it releases polluted oxygen. So we'll do that, and then we'll copy the settings and we'll paste them. So if we look at organic, it's all set properly. It'll warn you up here, insufficient oxygen generation. And this menu will pretty much stay up here all the time unless you're producing tons of oxygen. And we have enough in the room now that it's not a problem. But if you go under reports, and you can go forward and back. So if I look at the previous day, yesterday, we didn't add any oxygen, but we breathed 167 kilograms, and then our net was negative 167. So eventually this room would become depleted and everyone would die, but this algae terrarium and algae deoxidizer, if I turned it on, would start producing oxygen. And it has some other stats here about calorie generation and consumption and stress. And their stress is all 0 right now, which is excellent. It's another piece of research done, so we'll go in, we'll do liquid piping next. Oh, and okay, so one of the first things that was unlocked in that research was the compost. And the compost is kind of, it has a negative 20 decor for a 4 tile radius. So you kind of don't want it near your beds or kind of in the main base. I'm actually going to make a second level here with 4 tiles of headroom. 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to be careful digging near water when there's sand, because the sand can drop. So I'm building kind of another level, and I'll build levels successively down, and so we'll let them build that first, and then we'll dig out the space in between, and we can deconstruct this ladder as well. So these outhouses have 12 visits and 13 visits remaining. So we're going to build a compost down here where it's kind of out of the main base because it's ugly and stinky. And we'll probably move our outhouses down here later too. All these plumbing things were unlocked as well, but we won't get to those yet. And food, we unlocked planter boxes and the microbe musher. So this lets you make food out of dirt and water, which is not very nice tasting food, but it works. And we might build one of those later if we need it, but we don't need one just yet. Another thing we can build is this gas permeable tile, and I like to build a few of them between my floors so that CO2 can fall through and oxygen can rise. So I'm going to actually put some of those. They take copper, quite a bit of copper, and we don't have a lot right now, so maybe I'll hold off. I'll build one kind of right here. You can build it over top of tile, but when we get more copper we'll build more so that the air can travel between the floors. Liquid can't go through these, but air can. So I'll just dig out this other floor here, and I'll build a compost here, kind of at the end of this hall. And I'm going to build two because they're cheap, and if one of them is too full and you've got polluted dirt, it's just going to get stuck on the floor and cause a bunch of mess, so I always build two. Another thing you'll notice is that this area is a vacuum, and it's okay to unlock these, like dig into them. It'll probably suck the CO2 down into it, which is okay. But I may dig up first so I can get to this oxalite and this algae up here. I kind of want a ladder more central to my base, so I might deconstruct this storage compactor with deconstruct, and I'll set 9 so they do it right away, priority 9. That way I can build a ladder kind of up through the center. So I'll build a ladder, a sandstone up here. Might as well go all the way up here. Some sand is going to fall down as they dig that, because you can see some sand, so we'll have to make sure we clean that up. Probably don't have to go all the way up yet, so I'll just build it up to here. We need more research. We got through our next research, so we'll do power regulation next. I try to power through all the research early on, and then within the first 10 cycles, and then it's all done. Now they're out of breath here because all this red area here is CO2. They can't breathe, so if they need to breathe, they'll go upstairs and go to this oxygen here. And they were able to go in here and get water for this terrarium, so it's producing oxygen now and consuming CO2. You might need to build a few of these around your kind of sleeping area and base to suck up all the CO2. It's bedtime again. And we have a new duplicant, so if we click on this and choose duplicant, we can see who we got. Here's the loud sleeper, so we don't want to pick them, even though they might be a good digger. Bottomless stomach's not good either. They're going to eat more than normal. And slow learner is not great either, so I'm going to reject all. Later on, we'll get another one pretty soon, so better to wait for a good person. And if you take on too many duplicants and you don't have enough food, everyone will starve, and it's a bit of a nightmare. So these compost, you can set priority, and I usually set a higher priority so that they pick up polluted dirt right away. So I set these at usually an 8. That way you don't have polluted dirt sitting in the base, which produces polluted oxygen, which can cause them to be ill and stresses them out a bit. I want to build my next level also 4 tiles up, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up here. Making sure I don't necessarily dig too far into the hot zone here. They won't be able to build all this, so I'll need to dig out some of the area once they're done here. So that's probably going to be it for this first tutorial series. These are more about tips to just make it easier starting out. I try to do that through my other series, but that wasn't my main focus, so this series will just be about kind of tips. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any other tips. Just leave them in a comment. If you disagree with anything I'm doing, just let me know, and because I'm pretty new to the game as well, but I've learned a few things along the way. And if you'd like to get alerted on future videos, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll be putting these out every other day or so. And as always, thanks for watching.